Morning, everybody, and welcome to a special Sunday edition of Coast to Coast College Football Pregame Show. I'm your host, Uncle Shally, and we are down to two. We have a championship game matchup, much to the chagrin of one of our hosts. But before we get to all of that, break it down, my man Alex. We got a lot to go over, obviously. Alex apparently has a rant prepared for the likes of all ages. We're gonna let him have his moment. But top left corner, my guy brother from another mother, casually sipping coffee this morning, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, man. It was a week that my team didn't play, and I guess that's a little frustrating there. But I guess it could be worse. Alex is feeling how probably I felt, the first day that it happened, the loss, like that first hour. But he's had some other thoughts. He's had time to sit and kind of think about it, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say about his Ducks there, because I don't know if I've ever heard Alex say anything negative about that team in our 3 years of doing the show.
You're not wrong, and I am interested as well. I wish we could explain to Alex what the comfort of, the national championship, like Tempur-Pedic pillows feel like that we have. But listen, I'm not even gonna lie. I'm gonna introduce him here in a second, but there's a lot of people that asked me all week. They were like, "What? Where are you going?" I was like, I really think Indiana is the best team. I was like, but I am kind of pulling for Oregon. I was like, I think it'd be cool for our show. I was like, all three of us would have one in the first 3 years. I was like, I think it'd be really cool for Alex. And then the game started. Literally, top right corner, Mr. Oregon Duck himself, Mr. West Coast, Mr. Down on his luck, Mr. I think emotionally upset, Alex Elmore. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm getting up at 6 a.m. for this harassment and abuse. Okay, look,
has it begun?
Well, I have a lot to say. We're going to save it for later in the show to make sure we have time for it. Of course, a lot of stuff to cover today. But I'm okay. I'm okay today. I think Indiana is a juggernaut, and I'm sick and tired of Oregon being the team that has to face that juggernaut before the national championship. Last year with Ohio State, this year with Indiana. Proud to be a Duck fan, but a lot to be said. So we'll get into that later, but I know we have a lot to cover before then. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, Bill.
We do have a lot to get into. We're going to break in the huddle as always. College football this year has been just an absolute blessing of weekly news, no matter what's going on. We every time we think it should be slow, doesn't happen. We got recaps. We are going to, we're going to break down and preview the championship game a little bit, because we'll be back next Saturday before they play. Because college football in our infinite wisdom schedules a game on a Monday night. And we have something fun to do at the end. But there's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of our normal great insights from the three experts here. So, Alex, as always, you start the show, my man. Breaking the huddle. Take it away.
Shotgun. DC right. Flip 90. Dig. On the center. Ready?
All right. Well, welcome into another segment of Break the Huddle, where we cover all this weekly college football news. Obviously, as mentioned before, the college football championship is set. Indiana versus Miami in Miami, which is crazy to me, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. I think the biggest news has to start just with a university just up north from me, the University of Washington. A lot of drama has been going on campus with Demond Williams Jr. Allegedly signing a $4 million NIL deal with the university, and then just days later trying to enter the portal to transfer out. Washington, just a little brief recap of what happened after. Washington and the Big Ten actually pushed for a lawsuit for breach of contract. Demond Williams' agent also dropped him for ethical matters. He didn't get too much into it, but it's straight up saying, hey, like, you had an agreement, you're going back on it. That's not how I do business. I don't want to represent you anymore. After that, Demond changed his mind up, is staying at Washington. It sounds to me like he was really kind of forced to Obviously this is kind of the first time this has happened in the NIL kind of era with a university actually holding a player accountable and actually suing them for the breach of contract. Is this kind of the first stepping stone to what we can expect going forward, or is this like kind of like that warning that will keep the players kind of more conscious about their decisions?
So for me, I think it's pretty simple. I think ultimately you have the Washington Huskies, who, in my opinion, did a great job of, standing firm in, saying, hey, you signed this contract for us. We're going to make you honor that. And then the Big Ten for also kind of stepping in and saying, hey, like, Washington, we got your back through this. Absolutely, he signed his contract. He should still be here, no matter what happens, or, there wasn't a coaching firing or anything else that changed outside of, it sounds like Lane Kiffin and LSU kind of reached out over to him and they were like, hey, we potentially still have a QB opening left in this cycle. So would you potentially want to come down here? And it's like, oh, well, I can get money. I can go play at a big time program. I could go play with Lane Kiffin, and all those things are enticing, I think, if you are a quarterback. But if that's the case, you should have waited a little bit longer to ink your NIL deal. So for me, I think it's a great job by Washington for staying strong and not feeling like they have to, comply in this situation or, feel like they were in the wrong here, because I think Washington did everything right. Now, on the flip side of it, though, to the latter part of your question, I do think this will be the new standard with NIL deals. I don't think people will be let out of those NIL deals if they are inked with the intention of coming back to school. And in this specific case with Damon, there was language in that contract that he signed that he would not be able to hit the portal for at least for an additional year. So for me, I think it's pretty simple. I think if you're a university, that should be standard language in your contract. You don't want these kids starting to flip-flop because, maybe a kid declares or maybe a kid surprisingly enters the portal towards the end of that cycle period there. I think if you put it out there, you put the language in there, and you get those kids to sign it, they are yours essentially until they honor their end of the agreement there. So I give a lot of credit to Washington for that. And, I think moving forward here as well, this is definitely a learning lesson for Damon, but also a lot of the other players who are probably in his position where they're not necessarily at these huge time schools where, a national championship is the goal per se. But they're still making a ton of money. They're still in a really good spot. They're still at the team that originally believed in them enough to offer them and, make them their starter. So I think this is a learning lesson really for everybody involved about, best practices moving forward.
I agree with everything Cottrell said. I think this is kind of the warning shot across the bow. The big thing that I was really happy to see was what Cottrell mentioned right away. I was happy the Big Ten stepped in and said, hey, we're going to back our team here. I knew when we talked about it last week and the following day, his agent dropped him. That was a bad look for him. That is, like Alex said, that is his agent being like, hey, this isn't how I conduct business. You did give your word. You signed a piece of paper. There's money involved. You're going to honor that contract. I don't want this stain on me as an agent saying I condone this type of behavior or want it on my agency as well. That was very alarming for me as well. And then, of course, the announcement came out the following day that he was going to stay. Apparently, the interest in him went way down once his agent fired him, and the Big Ten stepped in because Washington, like Cottrell mentioned, made it very clear they were going to exhaust any and all options legally in pursuing this, which means if anybody takes him in the portal and plays him next year, they would have ran the case of been starting an ineligible player. And that would have been just an absolute mess, disaster. The NCAA in all their wisdom would have had to get involved at that point and been like, hey, you guys took a kid that legally couldn't be there. You're 10-0 and now you're 0-10. And that would have been a disaster for college football. So I guess it's kind of a case. I'm glad where cooler heads prevailed. I don't know how awkward and tense it probably is in Washington right now with him and that coaching staff. I think there's probably some fences and relationships that need to be amended there based upon his behavior and what he wanted to do. But at the end of the day, I think everybody will be fine by, spring and summer and get ready to play football. again, he's a good player. This is a learning moment for him. I think he's a kid that potentially has a very bright future. You got to grow up sometimes. He's got all his life to make money. He doesn't have to jump at, uh, an opportunity that would have steered him down the wrong path just to make an extra $1 million. He'll make that $1 million up somewhere down the road. But for me, I'm kind of glad this is going away. Like the trust said, I think this is going to be, kind of the standard case for if anybody else tries this. This is, I think, the reaction you're going to see from everybody now. Like, hey, you signed you signed your name to this contract, this piece of paper, the language within it, for all the money that it's worth, and we have to honor our part of it. You need to honor your part of it, and if not, like we said, it's a legally binding contract. So, and for some of these kids, there's going to be millions of dollars involved. I think these schools are already, with what they're giving the kids and everything else and paying now. I don't think they're just going to lay down for these things. I don't. I'm glad Washington stood their ground. And I think this is going to be this will be the case study going forward for every situation like this going forward, if there's any more.
Here's a question I have kind of for both of you, actually. When I saw this, obviously this isn't a left tackle. This isn't a free safety. This is the team's starting quarterback, returning starting quarterback. What kind of message does this send to his teammates in the locker room? Like, hey, he doesn't really want to be here. He was already looking for greener pastures, and then the university essentially forced him to come back or face a lawsuit. Like, as his teammate, like, do you really want him there? Does he even really want to be there?
I mean, I think that part of it is tough because obviously you feel like he's already kind of 1 foot out of the door, not focused on what's important to you. But at the same time, kind of like, excuse me, like Bill was mentioning there, with the amount of time that you have between now and the start of next season, he has essentially 8 months to prove himself to the guys in that locker room. So right now you're in the off season, you're doing your, like, they're probably practicing, or at least together, training in the weight room and things like that. So he has the opportunity now to kind of change those narratives in that locker room, whether it be, he, gives a speech in front of the team like, hey, look, this is what I was kind of, focused on here, but now I'm here, I'm locked in. I want to be a leader of this group of men, and really start to get behind that group of people there. But I also think part of it is also going to be on that coaching staff. I think it's important how coaches manage this kind of situation there. And, you see a lot of the like real conversations with some of the big time coaches like Deion Sanders or Dan Lanning, or, just coaches like that talk to their players about just real life situations. So I think it's also going to be important for a coach to kind of sit those guys down and say, hey, look, this college football now is a business, and, people have their things they want. They have the intentions that they want to kind of go through there. But ultimately, we're here. We got to be a family. I would make it clear that, hey, me and Damon have had a conversation, and, we're on the same page here. So I want you guys to be on the same page with him. I want you to still treat him like your brother. And I want you to still believe in him. And he wants to do what's best for this Washington Huskies team. So I think as long as both of those things happen, you have enough time to kind of mend that bridge to make sure that the team itself believes that he's there, and he's there to help them, ultimately reach whatever goals they're looking to accomplish this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna. I would assume he's probably gonna have to address the team. I'm assuming he's probably having a bunch of conversations with Jed Fish and the coaching staff before that. Like Cottrell said, they're not doing a lot of official team stuff right now. There's a lot of lifting and like group stuff like that. But he's got fences to mend. I mean, because to your point, Alex, I think there's gonna be people looking at him like, as soon as he has a bad game or anything like that, it's gonna be like, oh, is this guy like really here? Like, so he does need to regain the trust of his teammates, and I think football is definitely one of those sports where that matters. Like when you're in the huddle with somebody, like you got to be able to look at every one of those guys and know you're all pulling the same direction. So it is it's important. I think it will be taken care of in a weird way. I think it is the best possible time it could have happened. Like Cottrell said, like he's got winter workouts, he's got spring ball, spring workouts before everybody goes home, and they come back officially for camp in August. So he's got time. I'm sure there's a bunch of guys that as soon as he says sorry and realized I was young and I got ahead of myself and I was dumb and I made a mistake. I think that'll be enough for a lot of people. Other people might take more, but ultimately, I think by kickoff come the end of August, I don't think this is a situation for Washington.
I think partially another like part of it too is that some of these kids may have conversations with Damon outside of the building, and once he kind of lets them know what was going on the back end, they might even agree with him and say, "Hey, if I could have got an extra $1 million and went to go play at LSU or Ole Miss or just one of those big time programs, like I can understand what you were trying to do in the situation." Doesn't necessarily make it right. Doesn't mean that everybody in the locker room will agree with that, but I'm just saying, like, having those conversations and just being real with your teammates. I think it is going to be an important thing, especially with the day and age now of how NIL deals are and how important they are to certain student athletes there. So I think you can have some sense of understanding by having those conversations with your teammates, but this will be a long drawn out process though to win back over everybody in that locker room.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, it should be. I mean, essentially, he's turning his back on his brothers that he just fought in the trenches with for an entire year. I mean, and essentially, he went into the portal or tried to enter the portal with a do not contact, meaning this entire time he's been in contact and literally 4 days prior signed his deal with Washington. So he was already talking to another team when he signed that deal. So obviously, more may come out about this. We may see this more further down the line. Obviously, if it does happen again, we will cover it, of course.
Alex, I think it's interesting though because we had the conversation, I want to say before the year started and then a few weeks into the season, because both of our teams play Washington this past year.
Yeah.
And so we had the conversation about how good we thought Washington was. And a big part of it was because of how dynamic Damon was as a player. I guess for you, and I know there's a lot of things that changed. Like I know Denzel Boston's going to the league this upcoming year. But like for you, just kind of looking at Washington's outlook next season, I know they have the rivalry with you guys. Like, do you think this will impact, I guess, them on the field next season? Or do you think this is one of those things where Damon still has that talent and they're going to be as good as, as good as he is in taking his next step in his development?
Here's what I have to say. The reason I kind of asked you guys about the feeling in the locker room after this move is because I think ballers are going to ball out, and that dude is a baller, and I think he's going to have a fantastic season. But the question is how will his teammates respond around him? The best quarterback on leading a team is someone who will essentially take that huge hit to get that extra yard for a guy. And if this guy's already got a foot out the door, like, is he going to go that extra mile for his teammates? Or his teammates going to go that extra mile for him? So the more controversy at Washington, the more I love it. Because as a Duck fan, I love controversy at my rivals. But as far as for a team nucleus, this is one of the worst things you can have happen, because Washington had a lot of hope going into next year, bringing in another year of starting in that Washington Jetfish system. This was supposed to be the year where Washington took that step forward behind him. Now I'm a little worried if his receivers are going to be working out with him in the offseason as much, because maybe they have a little bit of a sour taste in what he did. So there's a lot of dominoes that can fall from this decision. So I think that the more chaos for a rival university, the better for me.
Understood.
Bill, any closing arguments or statements about this situation, whether it's regarding Damon Williams or another player that this could possibly be happening to?
No, I mean, again, I would reiterate what I said before. I'm glad this kind of ended up going the way it went, and this didn't turn into a bigger snowball and a bigger kind of shit show. I feel like where it could have. I'm very happy the Big Ten stepped in and kind of backed Washington right away. I think that might have given him pause too. Like, hey, like this just isn't lining up the way I thought it was going to. Like, if all these people are going to be against it, like I'm probably not going to win this situation. And ultimately, like I said, with his lawyer dropping him and then him, going back. I mean, I think he realized very quickly that he didn't have a whole lot of options, and this wasn't going to work out the way he wanted to. So I'm just glad it's over and done with now. We don't have to talk about it again, hopefully. And like I said, it's this didn't turn into something way bigger that we end up talking about all year next year. And again, I think he's a kid with a pretty decent future. So he can just get back to playing football and worrying about football.
Exactly. And speaking of playing football, obviously with 99.9% of the teams in college football done for the season, besides Miami and Indiana, this is the time of year where teams look closely on their timelines to see if players are coming back for next season or declaring for the NFL draft. Obviously, a few big names have declared already this season, including a few from Ohio State. Control, I'm going to start with you here. Obviously, you've lost a couple guys to go to the league already this year. I believe Carnell Tate said he was going to go. Obviously, Downs is going. Is there any players that are going to the draft this year that you wish were coming back for a year, or are you happy with the development of these players and you think that they're ready to take that next step?
I mean, shit, I wish all of them were coming back next year. I think they're all going to the league because they're, good football players there. So, I mean, you had Carnell Tate, Caden McDonald, Caleb Downs, and then Sonny Styles will also be gone, but he was graduating, so he couldn't have come back anyway. But I think all four are going to be first-round picks this upcoming year in the draft. And, obviously last year's team was super talented, and, they sent a ton of talent to the NFL, but, you had a lot of guys that replaced them. So like Arvell Reese, for example, didn't really play at all last year as a starter on the Ohio State defense, was a rotational piece, but now he's going to go be a first-round pick. Same thing kind of there with Caden McDonald. Like, he was a rotational piece there, but he wasn't a catalyst to that defensive line last year. And I think that's a testament to Ohio State's development, but also it's tough to replace those guys, man. Last year you won a national championship, and this year, you make the playoff, and people are saying that, oh, well, this team may even be better than last year's team. Well, the reality is that talent-wise, maybe, but that experience and just having that ability to stay poised and not, be afraid of the pressure is a huge thing. And so I think this year could have gone a lot differently. Maybe if you have, some experienced players there, but players learn with experiences. So next year I won't have to say, this exact same thing there. So of course I wish all of those guys could come back and, play for us another year. I think we'd be the best team in the country, next year if that were the case. But you're just happy for their development there. And, I always like seeing where the Buckeyes go. So as long as they're not a Steeler, I can go root for them in the future there.
And Bill, is there any names that you've seen that has entered that have declared for the NFL draft that you think either should come back or you're excited to kind of see at that next level? And I'm talking more underclassmen than seniors.
No, I mean, we actually, mostly pretty much everybody declared for us. I think there's a couple guys that could have come back for like their fifth year, but like everybody that's leaving for us is pretty much graduated.
What about Klein? I know I saw Klein is leaving. Were you expecting that, or you think he might come back?
I think there's a chance Klein comes back. I think after he goes through the initial kind of projection thing, we'll see. I think Klein is a very high upside. He just doesn't put it together consistently. Last year was kind of a throwout because of their quarterback issues. He had a better year this year, obviously. I think he's very good. He struggles to stay on the field, though. I mean, that's been his thing, for the last 3 years. He gets nicked up a lot. You're obviously looking, he's not quite as big as Colston. He's that same mold, though. He's a stretch tight end. Like, he's not really a traditional end of the line guy. He can do it. He can block if he has to, but you can do a lot of things with him. So I think he's intriguing. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up coming back simply because I don't think he's a first 2-day guy. And at that point, I don't think you lose anything going back. So he's the one intriguing one, but like Derek Moore and all those guys, I mean, they're all seniors. Not surprised. We don't have quite the haul that we did 2 years ago. So there's always guys you want to stay, though. I mean, like Cottrell said, if you're an Ohio State fan, you would never want Caleb Downs to leave school. But it's just a reality of it. So I think next year will be a little different for us because we'll have a lot of guys that have options and guys that are going to be higher draft picks than our class this year.
Well, I got to shout out my guy in the comments, Antonio Mills, because he is a fellow Ohio State fan here. So you are always welcome to check out the show, and we're always going to put up your comments, man. I'm with you. We are We are allies here. I'm glad you're here, Antonio. You can make this show feel a lot better here. So
you're getting blocked, Antonio.
About to take control off the screen here for a second.
Yep.
So actually, I have two players.
You two can get a room.
IO. You see it. IO, baby.
I've never seen a fan base get more excited about spelling a 4-letter word.
Hey, Bill, you cheer for a team that says EAGLES, Eagles. Like you're the exact same fan base.
Bro, you have to remember 3 letters. You have 1 letter that gets repeated in yours, for Christ's sake.
You have a letter that gets repeated in yours as well. There's 2 E's in Eagles. There's not 7 letters. There's 6 letters in Eagles.
You 3. You 3.
I'm just eating M&M's watching. I didn't have any popcorn, so keep going.
They don't even spell it together. That's what I mean. Half the stadium goes, so they got to remember 2 letters. Half the stadium goes OH and the other goes oh. Like they don't even spell the whole damn word together. That's how bad that is. Everybody spells Eagles together.
That's what they need to. If they don't, then they forget letters like at the NFL draft.
Before we get off topic here, let's calm it down. I got 2 players for you. I'm about to list, and I want to hear each of you. Who are you more surprised that has declared for the NFL this year?
Wait. Before we go there, Alex, you're not off the hook here. I need
no one's declared yet. No one's declared yet.
I know no one's declared yet, but I need some insight. What's going on with the Ducks? Who are you expecting to declare? I know we're talking portal next, so I won't ask you about the portal, but who are you expecting to declare? Big one being your quarterback.
Yeah,
I mean, do you think Dante is going to go? Do you think he's going to stay? What's up?
If Dante, look, if the Oregon had lost to Indiana, well, they did lose to Indiana, but had they lost,
that outcome hasn't changed, Alex. That's still a loss.
It hasn't set in yet for Alex. He's like,
had they won, had he had a better overall game, I think he's declaring. I think the way they lost and how he looked in the loss, Dante Moore is coming back next year. He's already kind of said that he feels like he has unfinished business at Oregon. Kenyon Sadiq, who has a year of eligibility left, who's one of the best tight ends in the country. He's also stated that he's unsure of what he's going to do, even though he is rumored to be.
Sadiq is gone, brother.
News for As of yesterday, Kenyon Sadiq says he has not made a firm decision yet, based on the fact that he feels like he doesn't want to leave the University of Oregon with stuff undone.
I get all that, and then his family are going to talk to people, and they're like, "You're going to be probably a first-round draft pick."
Exactly.
Bye.
But in my hopes is that he does come back, of course, obviously. Besides the seniors that obviously have to go, you say Dante and Kenyon are the two that my eyes are focused on the most. I think Dante comes back, and I do think if Dante comes back, so does Kenyon Sadiq. This junior class feels a lot like that Michigan junior class the year before they won the national championship, where they feel like they have to come back to finish something. Control, why do you have that look on your face?
Michigan didn't have I don't know how many bona fide first round picks Michigan had on that team. Of course, they had players that could have got drafted, absolutely, right. But it's different being a bona fide for Kenyon Sadiq. Honestly, in my opinion, I think it would be Dan Lanning would be doing a disservice to Kenyon Sadiq if he didn't tell him you need to go to the NFL draft. It's one thing with Dante Moore, because I've been on record saying that I think Dante Moore could benefit from going back to school for another year. I just think it might bite him, because I think this upcoming year, if he declares right now, he is a no doubt about it top 2 pick, although I think his development is not quite there yet. I think if he goes back to school, he has the potential to be the number 1 overall pick, but he also has the opportunity to be like a number 12 pick, because you have more of a loaded QB, more potential in next year's QB class, with Arch being there, with Julian Sayin being there, with potentially Lagway, potentially Raiola. We don't know what those guys' upcoming seasons are going to look like there. So I think there's more. Man. I think there's more concern with next year's class. Right now, you have Fernando Mendoza, and that is it. No matter what, you're a top 2 pick, bona fide this year.
Yes, but a lot of people have been in his ear about being drafted by the Jets. A lot of people are saying, hey, Dante, don't go unless you think the Raiders are going to draft you, which at this point, I don't think there's really any case for Fernando not to be drafted first based off of his performance, especially in the playoffs, winning the Heisman. Dude is absolutely balled out. So I don't know if Dante, unless he has an absolutely stellar, I'm trying to say stellar
Combine.
Thank you. I don't think he even then I don't think he passes Fernando. So depends on if he wants to go to New York, if he thinks the Jets are the right fit for him. Because like I say, for me, if I'm a quarterback and I think I'm going to the Jets or the Browns, no offense, Cottrell, that's not a situation currently I think I would want to go to get myself developed, especially with all the stuff going on with Shador this year, Dylan Gabriel, and all that. Like, you can't have two Oregon quarterbacks in the same room. It's just not gonna work out well.
I get that side of it. I'm just saying with Sadiq, I think Dan Lane needs to have a real conversation with him and say, hey, don't even we love you. We love to have you back, but this is an opportunity you cannot pass up.
I also think it's much easier for Dan Lanning to say that to Kenyon Sadiq because he has a fantastic tight end in Jamari Johnson kind of sitting there in the waiting. You guys have seen him, especially the last half of the season. Jamari Johnson really came out making tough catches, some catches that were even better than I've ever seen Kenyon Sadiq make. So like I said, the tight end room Oregon is strong. If we lose Kenyon Sadiq, I think we have a little bit less speed, of course, in the tight end room, but I think Jamari Johnson will fill in really nicely. I would like to see them both come back next year and make that push for the title run. Just like I would like to see Jay Harris leave the portal and stay at Oregon, especially after entering the portal and still playing in the Ducks, in the Ducks game this last weekend. Like, that says a lot about his character. That's the type of players I want in my locker room. So I'm hoping that they stay. But I know that if they leave, they definitely deserve it. So I'm kind of up in the air right now, but nothing official has been announced from anybody underclassmen wise. But we will keep you updated on that. Now here is, I'm gonna give you guys both two players that surprised me when I saw their names enter the NFL on the NFL declaration list, and that's one, Alabama's quarterback Ty Simpson, and two, Notre Dame's running back Jadarian Price. Obviously, Jeremiah Love expected. But Jadarian Price still has eligibility left. He has entered. Ty Simpson still has eligibility left. He has entered. Out of those two players, obviously different positions, who are you more surprised that they entered the draft this year?
I would say it's Price for me. I think the year Ty had, I don't think he wants to go through probably hitting the portal, which is what would have happened. And listen, I think you look at a lot of the failures and shortcomings of that Alabama team. They're not Ty Simpson related. If you watched a lot of Alabama football this year, there's a lot of great games he's put in while running for his life and getting beat up. I don't think him coming back and having another year similar to that is going to change anything for him. He's not going to be a top, like Alec or like Cottrell already mentioned, with the quarterback class coming out next year. He's not going to, if he stays and has a great year next year, he's still not going to be a top 10 pick next year. I think that's somebody in his camp kind of giving him the same advice Cottrell just went over. And this is the better year for you to go out. You're going to go a little higher. There's probably a chance you go to a better situation. You going back to college and getting beat up for another year probably isn't going to change anything for you. The other side, I'm a little surprised. Not that he didn't have a good year. Like, he had a good year being Jeremiah Love's backup. I just think he would have benefited greatly from coming back next year for, again, a Notre Dame offense that should be, even better than it was this year. CJ Carr will be a year older. Those wideouts will be a year older. I'm not saying he's as good as Jeremiah Love, but he would have been the starting running back next year. And he could have had a full year to put everything on tape. So that one, is a little. That one I was a little shocked when I read it as well. So I would definitely go Price.
Cottrell, same question.
I would technically go with Price here, but I think the one thing you guys are kind of forgetting here is that this as a whole is a very weird draft class with the depth at certain positions. And QB obviously being the most obvious one with Ty Simpson, like declaring now. I think Ty Simpson is going to be third quarterback off the board, and I don't think his play necessarily warranted that. But I think he has a chance to be potentially a first rounder, maybe even a top 10 pick. For Price on the other side, I know you were a backup this year, and I know, you were sitting behind Jeremiah Love, who is absolutely incredible, but you got a chance to still be the second running back taken off the board, even with you being the backup. Outside of Jeremiah Love, there's not really any big time backs that are going to be declaring this year. Justice Haynes has said he's coming back to school already. I know you got the two-headed monster at Penn State going in Singleton and Allen, but they didn't necessarily have great years this past year. So you don't know what people are looking at them wise as far as their draft stock. So I think this is the year to declare and see what you got and really give yourself an opportunity, because it wasn't quite the 1-2 punch of last year with Travion and Quinshon Judkins, but you saw both those guys went in the second round. They went to their respective teams, and now they've turned into starting running backs there. So I don't think it's necessarily crazy to have two guys from the same running back room when you saw the production out there on the field. And I would say last year that Quinshon was technically our backup running back. I thought Travion Henderson was our starter. And if you look at the draft side of things, Quinshon actually got drafted before Travion did. So not saying I think Price will get drafted before Love here, but I do think that Price is a really good running back. And I think what he's put on film is going to have the potential for him to get drafted in either the second or the third round there. And I don't know if going through another season at Notre Dame and going through what running backs go through, essentially taking another year off of your shelf life there, is worth potentially trying to get that first round grade, or you're in a spot where you're second, third rounder anyway by coming back to school there. So I'm not really surprised that Price declared either.
I think he's getting good advice, and that's, again, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it. Cottrell makes all the good points of why to do it, but again, I think he mentioned it. This is not a quarterback and running back heavy draft this year. It's not. It's actually very, very light on both sides. I'll to go to the Justice Hayes thing. I was shocked, that once Hyler was signed and they signed the kid from Oklahoma, I assumed that automatically was him going to the draft. Because everything I've read, he was number 2 or number 3 on every board running back wise behind Jeremiah. So I was like, okay, like he's just going to declare. So when I saw that he was going to go in the portal, that was surprising to me. So Price, again, I think I think he probably got a lot of good advice, being like, hey, you're one of the few bigger, probably actually NFL ready running backs that are going to be in the draft. Take advantage of it. So that's where I think he is.
And before we go get into some portal news, now that you mentioned the portal, of course, is there any other players that you guys have seen that has declared for the draft that you feel should come back for another year that they might be declaring a little bit too soon?
No, not really. I haven't seen anything. As a whole, I think for me, this year is so weird because like last year, I feel like I had a set list, and it's still early. Like I still haven't gone through like a full deep dive yet of the film at this point. But like last year, I felt like I had at least like 6 or 7 guys that were no doubt about it, day one starters, bona fide, future Pro Bowl caliber players here. And I'm not saying that we don't necessarily have it. Like I definitely think there's some top end talent here. But as a whole, I think this year is more of a crapshoot. And I think this is a year that if you look at the Heisman Trophy situation with who was getting the votes and who were voted on among that, I think it is the perfect parallel to how I feel about the NFL draft. Like this is not going to be a normal NFL draft year where you look back and say, oh, there were 15 all-pro guys that came from that draft class. Like, I don't think it's necessarily that, but I do think it's going to be important to find guys that fit the right schemes and things like that. So that's why this draft class is so interesting to me. I'm not going to be surprised with anybody declares, because I think if you go out and you have a good combine, you have a chance to, strap a rocket to your back essentially and go places where you would have never thought you were going to go when the season ended.
It's going to be a boring draft, and it's going to be a boring draft in that unless you're like really into the game and the top 6 tackles, the top 4 defensive tackles, linebackers, safeties, it's going to be a lot of that in the first round. So if you're not like an actual like deep dive type of fan, you're going to watch the draft and probably not know too many names when they get picked. So, not to Cottrell's point, I'm not saying it's not a talented draft. I think it is. It's not. It's not going to be a sexy draft. It's not going to
Not
be
like
that.
not like last year, at least. Like you had like
No.
last year, the two guys who were fighting for defensive rookie of the year both won the second round, and Nick Emanwari and Carson Schlesinger, and we knew both of those guys had a ton of talent. Emanwari was my top rated safety last year, but like that's how good the first round of the draft was. Now, of course, you have some misses. You have some misses in every draft in the first round there, but as a whole, like that's how good last year's draft class was, and I don't think this class will necessarily live up to that.
No, I mean, like you already said. I mean, you have two guys that are going to be starting running backs in the league next year that both went in the second round. And they're both going to be. They've both already shown they're both going to be very good NFL running backs. So last year was just one of those rare, insanely deep, but it was deep at all the fun, sexy positions as well. So this year is not going to be that.
Sexy must be the word of the show today. I think, just before we get onto the some portal news, I think the player that I would really like to see come back is, and this may try, I doubt you'll agree with me, but I think I want to see Zachariah Branch one more year. He didn't have a lot of usage at USC his first 2 years there, and then obviously he showed out at Georgia this year with just over 800 yards receiving. He only had one game over 100 yards, and I think there's a lot of improvement he could still be had, especially at a university like Georgia, where they develop players really well. I'd love to see Zachariah Branch come back for a senior year at Georgia, run it back with that team. Because Gunnar Stockton, he's coming back next year for Georgia, right? He's got a year. Yeah, so, build that chemistry with Gunnar Stockton. I think Zachariah Branch could be, a first-round draft pick next year. I feel like right now he might be a second or third-round pick based off of what he's put out on tape. Cottrell, I know you have a lot to say about Zachariah Branch. Do you agree with me?
I was going to say, why you think I'll disagree with you on that one? I mean, I think going back
you like Zachariah. You feel like he's one of the best receivers in the country. So
I do like Zachariah. It's not even necessarily I think he's one of the best receivers in the country. I just think he has like a lot of raw talent. And I look at him the same way that you would look at a guy like Percy Harvin back in the day from Florida, where you just put the ball in his hands and you just kind of let him go to work.
Or Reggie Bush, a wide receiver.
Exactly. So I think for me, I would be interested in him getting more development, I guess, at the receiver position there. But at the same time, I think he's one of those kids where, I talk about standing out at the combine. He goes out there, he runs like a 4.31, 4.29, something along the lines of that. He's going to stamp himself in the first round. I don't necessarily have a first round grade on him at this point. I think he's super talented. And like you said, he's one of my favorite receivers in this year's class. But I think the nuances of, just running routes and doing more things at the receiver position outside of just being fast and shifty, I think he does still have more room to grow there. But you have that speed, you have that talent of, making guys miss that, stuff that can't necessarily be taught or, just learned over the years there. It's going to be a hot commodity there for you. So I think if he can go out and show that the speed matches what you see on the field there, I think he's going to have an opportunity to be a first-round pick this year regardless.
And I think Percy Harvin is one of the best comps you've probably ever come up with for this show. And I'll say that I think if you want to draft him, you've already seen everything you need to see from him. I think everything else you said is literally, I think it's spot on. Percy Harvin was not a great route runner in Florida, but he was a guy that as soon as you put the ball in his hands, you could see how much faster he was than everybody else, how elusive he was. They'll fine tune your route running when you get to the NFL. They'll work with you in the offseason. They'll correct those little things. It's the physical things, like Cottrell said. As long as he goes to the combine and performs and looks as fast in person as they think he looks on film, he's probably going to be a slot guy in the NFL. Any team, especially the bottom of the first round, somebody moving back in to get him, could easily see that. Because again, it's going to be our job is to fine tune the little things, and then our biggest job is to find out how to get the ball in his hands and just let him go do what he does. So he's definitely that type of player. I'm not saying he wouldn't benefit for coming back another year. I totally understand why he declared though. I think overall it's probably the right position or right decision for all those factors. Again, I think he's a playmaker type guy. He's not a guy, that he's not a precision guy that you're going to get to run to be like the best route runner in the NFL. That's not what you want out of him. You want him to be, dynamic and make explosive plays, and he can already do that. So, like I said, they'll fix the little things. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of those teams at the bottom of the first, like, hey, get another offensive weapon for cheap for a guy that fell to us that, we think has a high ceiling. I think that's perfect for him.
Looking at teams like who are going to be up there potentially, like the Chargers, like adding another playmaker to that offense, or maybe the Broncos, or I just think about these teams that are in the playoffs right now that kind of have a void of explosive playmakers on the offensive side of things. There, like,
Agreed.
why not take a flyer on them there?
Couldn't agree
Absolutely. Now, obviously, we're going to get some portal news. We'll talk about some names that are still in the portal, of course. But first, I got a little game I put together, and it is called Cash or Future. I'm going to put up – I got 4 quarterbacks for us this week. I'm going to put up on the screen, and we're going to have a little conversation about if they made their transfer decision based on the cash or based on developing for their future. As an example, Dante Moore, he transferred to Oregon after a year at UCLA, and he kind of sat for a year. That would be called a future move. Just so people can understand what we're kind of getting at here. So first up, we already did that. In cash or future, DJ Lagway, obviously transferred from Florida. Go ahead, Bill.
Is he officially there? Like
he's committed, but
he hasn't signed.
No pen to paper, but he is committed.
But this is his dad's alma mater. So he does have some ties to this university. And we're going to play this game like he's officially signed. Because like everything crystal ball wise is pointing towards Baylor for DJ Lagway. So DJ Lagway going to Baylor, is this a cash move or is this a future move?
For me, I think this is easy. I think this is a future move. I think he could have easily probably gone to a more well-endowed, player in the NIL game and gotten a boatload of money here. But honestly, me seeing this, I was like, Baylor, really? Like, that's where DJ Lagway is going to go? Because I was, just surprised that, the kind of school that he ultimately went to. But I do think it being his dad's alma mater and, probably those relationships that, were built there in this process here, I do think they're going to, have a big time player with his development there. So I think this is a future move.
Bill?
I'm going cash. I think we're sleeping on the fact that Baylor definitely has money. I think they're the highest. Sure. I think they're the highest bidder right now, and I think that's why he hasn't signed. I won't be shocked if he never plays for Baylor. I can't go to future only because I can't. I mean, are we saying he's going to go to Baylor and they're going to develop him into something that we all think he can become? It's a stretch for me. This one's tough. This is a good one to start with, but I'm leaning cash on this one because I think there's a good chance he doesn't even play for Baylor. I think he ends up somewhere else.
Well, I guess I say future too because of fit necessarily. Like Baylor is not necessarily known for their development of quarterbacks there, but I understand that, but I'm just saying that if you're a former 5-star kid and you go to, a school like Baylor in this day and age, I think you only make that decision with a clear plan in place. Like they had to sell his family on something, especially with his dad being, that being his alma mater there.
But is it a situation where he's still kind of waiting for other dominoes to fall?
If that's the case, why commit?
He committed. He didn't sign. Like I said, he went there. He went there and visited it. He kind of placates his father at the same time. Like, oh, cool. Like my dad went here. I'll go play here, or I'll commit here. But I mean, again, he hasn't signed. He's still keeping his options open. Is he waiting for Dante to decide what he's going to do? Because that makes from all reports we've seen, cover your ears, Alex. But that means apparently Raiola's going to Oregon if that happens. Like. Okay, it's a domino effect.
Time out. I don't want to hear Raiola and Oregon mentioned together.
Bro, it's everywhere.
Again
You're going to have to
Ever.
deal with it.
I don't want Rayola. I don't want Mini Mahomes running my program. No thank you.
Anyway, all I'm saying is, does that open a different door for him somewhere in the domino effect where he could go to a better team and maybe get more money? That's all I'm saying. I think he's keeping his options open until he signs his name. That's honestly what I think he's doing.
Alex, what are your thoughts?
Is it possible to be both? Is it possible
that's why I think it is,
or a future move? Because obviously his father went there, and he's got a little bit of a family ties. It's a very aggressive spread offense that could really suits his skills. It kind of will allow him to show more of his pocket presence and arm capabilities. And I like Jake Spavital. I really do think that the guy has a good offensive mind, and I think that if he had the right quarterback, I think that would kind of be that last missing piece that Baylor needs, because we were talking last year about Baylor competing for that Big 12 championship earlier in the year. And obviously the season did not end up how they wanted to, but the end of the season on a strong note. They were one of the 5 best offenses in the country in October and November. So I think that there was a lot of strong finish at Baylor kind of would help solidify this move. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it will help his future, as Florida doesn't seem to be going anywhere promising. And I think that, with that sinking ship, I would hate to see DJ sink with that ship. So might as well try throw your marbles in another basket. And I think Baylor's the right move, especially with, the family ties there. So I think this is a little bit of both cash and future, but I did just check. It is not official. He is technically still has visits. He has one Ole Miss coming up as well. But people are leaning that he will be going to Baylor just because of how close to his family it is, how close to his hometown. And also because of those, like I said, the family ties to the university. So that was the first one.
Ole Miss might be. I mean, have we got any kind of indication that Chambliss is coming out?
No, Chambliss
got denied.
Motion got denied, and they already have a commitment from Deuce Knight, Auburn's true freshman last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand DJ is a starter, and if that's the case, they would obviously entertain that. But I think Deuce Knight is the perfect guy to go in and take over for Chambliss in that spot there, because I think he can run the offense in a very similar manner there. But do have a question here, and I know I don't want to necessarily just interrupt the game. I just want to make sure that we address this at some point about what do you guys think about the Pac-12 with their new teams. I think this is an excellent question, especially with your ties to the Pac-12, Alex. So we don't necessarily have to go over it now, but I did want to highlight it and make sure that we address it at some point.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we'll just after I have 3 more quarterbacks to talk about, and then we can talk a little bit about the Pac-12.
All right, sounds good.
Because I actually have a little bit of breakdown about each conference's bowl records, and I was talking about which conference is really good.
Dude, let Alex cook, bro. He's got a lot of material.
That's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to put it in there. I just wanted to throw it out there. How he just had the impromptu comment. I wanted to make sure we saw it. That's all.
He's just trying to clog up the show so we have less time to talk about Oregon, Indiana at the end. That's all he's doing.
Yes, exactly. I planted these comments so that we would have more to talk about. But next up, we are going to Indiana. Obviously, Josh Hoover transferred from TCU to Indiana. Had a fantastic career at TCU. I think one of the a great college arm. Cash or future on this move? I think this is a pretty easy one.
This is
super easy.
Future for the cash. You're going to go to Indiana. You're going to play with Cignetti. You're going to have a phenomenal year because Indiana just is doing a great job with building that roster out. They go out and get Nick Marsh from Michigan State as well for next year. So, Hoover, you're going to have a dedicated number 1 option there. You're going to play for Cignetti, where everything just opens up because of his game plan and, the things that he schemes open there. So I think this is a 100% a futures move, and don't be surprised next year when, the season's over and we're talking about Josh Hoover in that conversation with those top 5, top 6 quarterbacks, coming out for the NFL draft.
I couldn't agree more. I don't have much to add to this. It is definitely a move to make the cash. So it is, I think it's a smart move by him. Go up in class a little bit, go play in the Big Ten, probably have a really good, year, both visually and statistically in that Kurt Cignetti offense, and then go get paid. So this is a no-brainer for him.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a futures move for sure. Basically, he's been like I said, at TCU. I think he's kind of maxed out where he can develop at that university. I think Signetti is definitely going to push him to that next level. It honestly feels like a Fernando Mendoza 2.0 with a little bit more of a turnover problem. So I feel like if Signetti can kind of rein in his decision making and he can turn those 13 interceptions from this year into like 6 or 7 turnovers next year and interceptions next year, I think this is going to be a move that keeps Indiana in the college football playoff conversation all year long. I really like Josh Hoover as a quarterback, so I think this is a great move for us. And I agree.
They get one more year, and then both those coordinators are getting plucked after next year. So,
see, that's the thing. I don't know for sure because I think at some point those coordinators have to have aspirations of being a big time head coach, but they've both literally been with Signetti through I know they talked about on the broadcast of the Oregon game, but they've been with him through the mud where they were making, $6,000 a year. And so I do think, now they said they're making, close to $3 million a year now. There's something about that loyalty there. And I do think it'll be different if they go out and win a national championship or two within the next, 2 to 3 years here. Of course, that will probably play a part. And, Signetti's probably going to be very open to them, just letting their wings out and letting them fly. But at the same time, what better job can you have?
To keep them.
What better job can you have being because let's be real here. They're not going to go get a LSU, Florida, kind of job there. So would you rather go be, I don't know, Memphis' head coach, Oregon State's head coach, or would you rather be Indiana's coordinator?
To that Signetti point, though, they know where he started. That's part of the grind. They're both young guys. If they want to ever become a head coach of a Big Ten program or an SEC program, you got to start somewhere. They know they're going to have to go backwards to go forward again. So, they're going to make their money, this year and next year. And then, even if you get a head coaching job, you're still going to be making decent money, even if it's a smaller school. So, I'm just saying they're both young too. They're both going to be hot names. I'm not saying, it's set in stone, but both those names are going to be thrown out there, for sure next year.
Last question on Indiana before I go on to the next contestant here is, do you think, and I have a very strong opinion on this, I think Signetti is going to stay in college for his entire coaching career. That's where he thrives. That's where he does the best at. Do you think there's a chance or an opportunity for an NFL team to go after Signetti? Because with all the NFL openings right now, his name has not been mentioned for any of them. And with how good of a job he's done at Indiana, it's surprising that a coach wouldn't be mentioned for the next level job with this much success.
So I think he's a college coach.
So I think too.
I agree with that, and I also think age factors into it. Do you want a 65-year-old rookie head coach in the NFL? I don't know what that potential growth looks like. What your future with that organization even looks like. We're talking about right now where Harbaugh is one of those names. He's up there in age. Pete Carroll obviously just went back with the Raiders, but that didn't work out, and he's an established NFL veteran coach there. So I just don't know if you want to go through the growing pains of making that transition with a 65-year-old head coach in the NFL. And I think with all the success that he's had already at just Indiana, because they're not known as being a football powerhouse, but all the success that he's had already there, I think it would be a mistake to try and, go up to the next level there, because I think he truly has the opportunity to run college football if that's what he desires to do.
And I think you've seen with other cases, we've talked about it in college football, how much of a difference there is between college and the NFL. You've seen it in basketball as well. There's a big difference in the mindset of the players. And, you've seen the best of, you've seen the GOAT, Nick Saban couldn't cut it. And, that's literally what put him back at Alabama. I think Kirk Signetti is one of those guys, and he's from the Nick Saban tree. He's a great motivator and builder of young men. And I think his message and his coaching style, that's where he thrives. I don't think it works as well in an NFL locker room. It's a different dynamic. It's a different relationship. And I genuinely think he enjoys coaching college kids. And I think they're more receptive to his message and his coaching style. I mentioned it when we were talking about Freeman a couple weeks ago. Not saying he doesn't ultimately end up in the NFL. He probably does because he's so young. But I just feel better with him being in college football, and I feel the same way with Signetti. I think it's I think it's harder on all three of our lives the longer he stays there. But at the same time, I like it. I like it that Indiana's going to be this like perennial team now. Like it's another team. So it's another team for the Big Ten. So I think he's a college lifer. I would be shocked if he ever goes to the NFL. I really would.
Well, One Love brings up a great point here. He said, I believe he likes Indiana, but I also think if Ohio State offered 7 years for $100 million, he'd be on the next flight to Columbus. Well, I 100% agree with you because that would make you the highest paid coach, and Ohio State is the best job in the country. So I 100% agree that.
Here we go
with One Love. Oregon's not even in the conversation. You're spending all the money right now. You're not winning. How is that? How is that
farther than you did? Got farther than Ohio State did.
Oh,
you still have 0 national championships, my friend. Zero. With all the money you spent over the last 3-4 years.
You're yet just restarted again.
Yes.
Maybe next year.
I didn't think about that.
Say the line, Alex. Say the line.
Next year is our year.
Yeah, starting to sound like the goddamn Cowboys fans. Jeez. Next student athlete. Let's go.
Next up, we got Brendan Sorsby, Texas Tech. Cash or future?
I think this is the same as the last one. I think it's a great move for him. God knows, I don't think Texas Tech could go into next year with the same situation they just came out of. After that performance. So I think he's going to go play for a really good football team, and he's going to upgrade that offense. He's going to develop. He'll get a little bit better, and it's going to make him more cash in the future. So I think this one's both.
For me, this is a cash move. I think that if you're looking at Texas Tech, again, similar like how we talked about with Baylor, Texas Tech does not have this history of necessarily developing quarterbacks and things like that. And for Texas Tech to go out and spend, I think it's upwards of $6 million on Brendan Sorsby. I mean, that's a huge NIL deal for a quarterback who was pretty solid at Cincinnati. Like I told you guys, I like Cincinnati at the beginning of the year to, be one of those sneaky good teams in the Big 12. But even still, like I think $6 million for Brendan, and this isn't necessarily a dig specifically at him, but that's a lot for me. And I think that's more than, he probably deserved there on the open market there. So I think Texas Tech kind of overspent to make sure that they got a quarterback in to replace Baron Morton for next year. So for me, I think this is more of a cash move, because if you're just thinking about the development of your future, I don't know if Texas Tech is the place to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I do think this is a future move. I think the cash helped, but I think after seeing kind of like with the season he had and the lack of success in Cincinnati, and seeing where Texas Tech was able to get to with what Oregon made look like they didn't have a quarterback, of course, I think that Texas Tech was a quarterback away from being in the semifinal this year. That's how good that defense is. So I feel like Sorsby is the answer here at Texas Tech. Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see what kind of development he gets there. But I do think that this is a good futures move for him and for the university, because, like I said, Texas Tech was one of the most talked about teams this year, not only because of their performance on the field, but how much that they were investing into the program. So they're investing just over $5 million into Sorsby, and Texas Tech has the defense to remain a powerhouse this season and in the Big 12. So I think this is a futures move for both Sorsby and Texas Tech. I think that this agreement is going to benefit both a university and the athlete next season. So I think Texas Tech is going to remain at the top of that Big 12 and in the conversation for a college football playoff berth because of this move.
Real quick, though, I do want to say, I get that Baron Morton had a bad game against Oregon. He played absolutely awful. And I do think better QB play would have put them in a position to win. But I don't necessarily agree with the notion that they were a quarterback away because Barry Morton was undefeated in the regular season. Barry Morton helped lead that Texas Tech team to every game that he started before Oregon. They won by 20 plus points. With him at the helm there, and of course, the defense plays a huge part in that. But you could say that maybe the moment was too big for Barron in the playoffs there, but I thought that he had a really good season in that. Obviously, the one game they lost, Barron Morton didn't play. So, I think that also kind of goes to show you, his importance to that team there. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I don't want to, shit on Barron Morton too much here because obviously he was a huge reason why they lost the playoff game. But I mean, outside of that one game, he was really good throughout the season and a big part of why Texas Tech was this surprise story of, being as good as they were in that regular season.
Okay, well, I'll shit on him then if you don't want to do it. He was the worst player on that field by a mile. By a mile. Their defense, I mean, I think if we're being honest, I don't think without a shadow of a doubt either Oregon was the best team they played all year. And he looked overwhelmed. And again, I think moment too big for him is a little bit of an understatement. I mean, he missed wide open throws. He was nervous in the pocket every time he dropped back. He made horrible reads. I mean, I'm not saying the guy's a terrible quarterback, but I don't think you can also walk away from that game and say that guy can win us a national championship either.
Well, if that's the conversation that we're having, then are we going to say that Oregon could have won the national championship this year with a better quarterback? Because in the game against Indiana, I'd say Dante Moore looked overwhelmed. I would say that Dante Moore didn't play up to his potential there. I'd say that
I don't disagree with it, and I'm sure we're going to get into it when we do the game. But we're also talking about Dante Moore probably needs to come back for another year.
We're not shitting on him though. We're not saying that he's just this.
We haven't gotten to the recap yet, so you don't know what we're going to do for him yet.
Alex is apparently going to shit on him.
You don't know what we're going to do.
I know we're not going to.
I'm also going to say this.
We're going to say he had a bad game, and we're going to just kind of blow by it and say Indiana.
I'm not going to say that. Good.
I'm
not going to say that, but I'm going to also say Dante Moore also has really good games on tape against good teams.
He didn't look great against Texas Tech. He got fortunate that this defense played absolutely incredible.
I think
I like Dante. Don't make me shit on Dante here. I'm just saying
I'm gonna do it. No, but I think Dante played a really smart game against Texas Tech, though, which is what they needed to do. I think that was their game plan. I said that last week. I think it was, hey, take our shots when we can. Let's, dink and dunk and pick and pull and, try to keep that defense on the field as much as possible. And we'll take our points when we can. And I think that's how Dan Lanning coached that game. I think it was a great game plan because their defense made him look awful. I mean, he looked. I'll say this, and somebody I can't remember who said it, but somebody said nationally, he looked like a guy that the starter got hurt the second snap of the game, and he came in and he had never played in a big game before. That's what he looked like. And it's an accurate representation. He was 9 of 24. He looked like the guy that was I've never done this. What the hell am I doing here? I really don't know the offense. We're so screwed. That's what it looked like. It's really that bad if you go rewatch it. It's terrible. So again, I think I was wrong about Texas Tech this year. I thought this upcoming year was going to be their year. They're obviously going to lose a few pieces. That defense is still going to be great, and they've upgraded, in my opinion, big time at quarterback. So I'm not saying he's the end all be all, and I'm not saying they're going to win a natty or anything like that. But I don't think you could run it back and look everybody in the eye and be like, we're going to be okay. I don't think you could do that either.
All right, we got one more before we get into recaps, and then we go on from there. Byron Brown, South Florida to Auburn. Cash or future?
For me, I think this one's easy. I'm going to go future. You had Golish ultimately go down to Auburn. That was his coach at South Florida. I mean, I just think this is him going. And, of course, Auburn's giving him money. I don't want to downplay that. But I think this is just him going back and having that relationship with his coach, the guy that believed in him, the guy that helped him have this incredible season this past year. And now he's going to get an opportunity to do that on the big stage at Auburn there. So I think this is future. Of course, cash is going to play a part in all of these decisions here, but I think this is an easy future move. The relationship's already there, and now you get to go do it on the biggest stage there in the SEC.
I agree. I mean, I think it just all the dots were. I guess I'm a little surprised he didn't give Hartline a chance, but at the same time, I think.
Why would you be surprised him not giving Hartline? You can go play for your old coach at Auburn in the SEC, or play with a new guy who's never been a head coach before at your current school.
I'm saying I don't think it's necessarily guaranteed he's starting there. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying there was a little part of me that was like, maybe gives Hartline a chance. But again, you're going to go to Auburn, you're going to compete for the starting job. I mean, Auburn has also kind of been a dumpster fire for the last decade. So, for their standards. So it's not necessarily like he's moving into the penthouse of the SEC either. So, but that being said, I think it's future. I think he'll get developed better at Auburn, where I guess he feels comfortable with his old coach, and hopefully he'll start, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to bring up is, obviously the draw to stay at South Florida, obviously going with your coach that you've been working with and successful with makes sense. But also, like, Brian Hartline is arguably one of the best wide receiver developing minds in college football. You saw what he was able to do at Ohio State. And if you have that kind of mind working with your wide receivers, you're a fantastic 3,000 passing yard season, 1,000 rushing yard season. Now turns into possibly a 3,800 passing yard season. And you have, like I said, fantastic wide receivers around you that will up your game to help your better throws look even better because of the kind of training and coaching that they're going to have from the new head coach there. But I also understand transferring to Auburn, staying in a system that you're familiar with. Change is scary. So even though he's changed going to Auburn, he's going there with his guy, with Golish. So I think this is definitely I say this is a futures move because I guarantee he doesn't go to Auburn unless he's told that on the depth chart day one he's going to be QB1. Yes, there may be competition, but he's going there with the assumption that he's QB1 on that depth chart and to try to turn the Auburn program around. All three Auburn quarterbacks that from last year that were at the university have all transferred out, including what's his face, the dumpster fire, Jackson Arnold, who committed to UNLV, which seems to be where all the dumpster fires go for a year. Who else went there?
Orgy.
Yep, Malachi Nelson went there, right? Or who was it that? Malachi Nelson went to? Where did he go? He went to
UTEP.
UTEP. Yes. Okay. So I think this is a good spot for him. He's going to show out, but like I said, I think that going to Auburn could hurt his future if the team looks like it has the last couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately that it's going to be a good spot for him. I just think you got the chance to play in the SEC with your old coach at a university that's probably giving you more money than what USF did. I would much rather do that than go play for. Well, I think he's a great coach. Obviously, Ohio State fan here, but I think he's a great coach, but a lot of uncertainty there. First time being a head coach. Do I want to go through the growing pains with him, or do I want to go with my guy who I know what he can do? And, I already know the system, and there really shouldn't be any growing pains outside of just being in a new conference. Like the system itself there will be structured, and what to expect and what you need to do to have success in that system.
All right. Well, we'll have more of these next week. If you guys like this segment, throw it in the chat. If you don't like it, also put it in the chat, and we'll never do it again. That's how we work on this show. Your guys' feedback means everything. So let's go ahead and get into recaps of the college football playoff semifinal. Miami, Ole Miss, Indiana, Oregon. Bill, introduce them. Where are we starting?
We will start with Miami, Ole Miss.
Good choice.
Great football game. I think in the end, when all the dust settled, you saw everything you wanted to see in this game. It looked really early on that Miami was. I felt like watching the game, you felt like Miami was a better team, but Ole Miss did a lot of things to stay in the game. They started to get their offense kind of on track later in the game, and then it kind of went back and forth. I think 4 lead changes in the last like 17 minutes of the game, and it turned out to be an instant classic. I felt like a little bit at the beginning of the game, Chambliss was a little unsettled, but then he started to find his groove. I think they went away from Lacey a little bit too early after the touchdown run, but then you found out that his hamstring was bothering him a little bit. But Miami was just kind of always there. They never really went away. The defense still got stops when it needed to. And I hate to say it, I think Ole Miss went down and scored that great touchdown with almost 3 minutes to go, and I was happy because I turned into a big fan of Chambliss. But in the back of my head, right when it happened, I thought they left too much time on the clock. And I know you can't. It's hard to say that and not do that. When you have obviously a wide receiver that's wide open and you make a throw like that and score. I mean, if it's there, you have to take it. But you got to tip your hat to Carson Beck in that offense. Pretty much a drive for your life. Got the ball. They went right down the field. Malachi Tony is special. I know we talk about all the Ohio State guys on this show a lot, and for a good reason, deservedly so. Don't get me wrong. Malachi Tony is a special wide receiver. Couple big catches on that drive. Carson Beck made a couple big throws. They still ran the ball. It was a very well called final drive to win the game. Then Carson Beck had to scramble from like 10 yards out to win it with pretty much 20 seconds to go. Great football game. Everything you'd want out of a college semifinal. Not surprised Miami won. Again, I think everybody's sentimental favorite here was Ole Miss. I think Chambliss won over so many fans in the process of this. With his play and just his attitude, everything he was doing on and off the field. Sad that he lost, but you got to tip your cap to Miami. It's just another great game played.
Control?
I agree. I think that this was definitely a tale of two halves, though, for both of these football teams. There, as good as Miami had been defensively throughout the playoffs so far, with the game against A&M and the game against Ohio State, that didn't really show up against this Ole Miss team. Yes, they were getting stops, but they weren't getting the pressures we were accustomed to see them getting throughout the beginning of the college football playoff there. I think Ole Miss did a great job of trying to control tempo and, going through the hurry up, making sure guys were tired and things like that so that, Miami's defensive line weren't able to just pin their ears back and go get after the quarterback there. It did take a while for Ole Miss to get adjusted offensively, though, to, find the right spots and take their shots down the field. And we saw that more in the second half. But to that same token, while I do want to give Ole Miss's offense credit, I also want to give credit to that Miami offense. I thought throughout this playoff run for them, I had said basically every matchup that Carson Beck was going to have to do more. And he didn't have to do more against A&M. He didn't have to do more against Ohio State. But in this game, he was tasked to do more because once Ole Miss's offense got it figured out, they were able to put points up on the board and do it really in a hurry. And there was no stopping them, even with Kawan Lacey having that injury that he had there. So Carson Beck took that to heart, and he was moving the ball down the field, and he's earned a lot of my respect here. Obviously, while he was at Georgia, I thought that he would always be there for the moment, but he'd have a ton of turmoil to ultimately get there. He'd have the turnovers mixed with the big time throws to put points up on the board. In this game here, I thought he played a phenomenal second half there. He was always poised. He did exactly what they needed him to do. And then ultimately, he runs the ball in to get the game-winning score there. So give a ton of credit to that Miami offense there because, the defense, the one time throughout this playoffs, the defense let him down. Carson Beck said, no problem. I'll lead the offense down the field. And it's kind of cool to see the difference from, this year with Miami versus how he was with Georgia in those big time games.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was three things that kind of changed this game for me, and that's the fact that Miami was 13 for 21 on third and fourth down conversions. Ole Miss was 2 for 10. Ole Miss could not get Miami off the field. Miami had the ball for 41 minutes of this game, absolutely dominating the time of possession. And then for me, I felt like for Ole Miss to have a chance to, and obviously they made this a fantastic game, so I'm not taking anything away from that. I would have liked to have seen Trinidad make more moves outside of the pocket. I feel like there are plays and some drives that could have been extended if he would have been able to kind of get out of the pocket a little bit. Obviously, Miami did a fantastic job eliminating this fact. I would have liked to see more designed runs. Trinidad only had 5 rushing attempts for 7 yards. Obviously, sacks could do kind of a little bit of a play into that yardage, of course. But I feel like Trinidad should have been a larger part of the game plan against this Miami defense because nothing equalizes. Nothing is a true equalizer to a great defense like a mobile quarterback. So I wish they would have used him a little bit more in that sense. And Bill, I know you were going to say something as well.
No, I mean, I think Miami's offense, to your point, did its job. And just double back on what Cottrell said, tailor 2 halves. I felt like Miami's defense was tired at the end of the game. Cottrell mentioned that, the beginning of the game, they were really getting a lot of pressure. Then all of a sudden, I think some credit has to go to Ole Miss. I think they switched their protections up a little bit and started blocking a lot better, but they just weren't getting that push and that surge anymore that they were in the first quarter. And again, I think that's what led to Ole Miss. Shamlis could sit in the pocket and let the guys get downfield and develop the routes, and they started picking them apart. So something definitely, worth watching, come next week, especially in Miami where it could be hot. So, Miami doesn't have a ton of depth. They have some, but I really feel like those guys were a little bit worn down in the second half. So, but it didn't matter because their offensive line wasn't, and they just kept bullying Ole Miss. But, that's all I wanted to add to that.
And I think that's a great point there. And I know we're not doing previews necessarily right now, but I do think it will be important to watch. And I just want to say it out now for Indiana. And if they go tempo in that football game next week, I think Kirk Cignetti is a film junkie. He's going to see it. I think it was my biggest takeaway going into this Ole Miss and Miami game. I was like, the way Ole Miss runs their offense, that tempo should get that Miami defensive line tired, and you should see that go into effect, later on throughout that game there. And, you say they have some depth there. Miami does not like to rotate their defensive line. And so you have 2 incredible talents in Messidor and Ruben Bain there. But if you can just kind of eat at them and, just make sure they're on the field at all times there, you saw Ole Miss was starting to have more success because there were times where Messidor was on the sidelines. And I know he had an injury, but there was times where he was just sucking wind on the sidelines, and they were able to have success and move the ball down the field in those situations there. So will be very important for Indiana, I think, to go tempo there and start to – that's how you slow down and neutralize that Miami defensive line.
Not going to agree with this, but I will tell you that it's hard to say he's not number 2. I don't think there's anybody better in the country still than Jeremiah Smith. I think he's just a different type of kid, but Malachi Toney is damn special. I'll say that.
Yeah, the way he was able to bounce back after that fumble in Texas A&M and then ultimately score that touchdown to get to the game-winning touchdown, I think speaks volumes to his maturity as a player, especially being a freshman. So it's a great call out. It'll be good to see what he can do with another year in the system for next year. But Malachi Toney is definitely someone to watch.
Alex, I'm putting you on the spot here. You taking if you had a magic trait machine and it was possible, would you take DeCorian Moore or Malachi Toney?
DeCorian Moore.
Oh.
Look, DeCorian Moore had limited playing time due to injury. I like his size, his hands, his playmaking ability. Malachi Toney had a lot of time to showcase what he's able to do and was a focal point of that offense. We weren't really able to fully see a full season of Moore, so I really am interested to see what his sophomore year will look like next year. So
Alex,
I'm happy with what we have.
I respect it because you never fail to let me down in these moments. So
never fail to let you down.
I was going to say I am a fan of Corey Moore, especially after watching the show. But I'm gonna leave this to the wide receiver guru, and I'll let Cottrell just state what the answer to this question should have been.
I mean, I would personally take Malachi Tony, but that's not to say that Decory Moore isn't special.
I'm not saying he's not.
I would take Malachi Tony, but I had to ask Alex because I think that's the
My answer will
conversation
always be to stick with my guys. Though I am excited for the year when NIL decides that trading college players is a thing. I think we're only about 5
we're
years
probably not.
away from that.
I don't think we're 5 years away. I think you're nuts. I think the way this is going right now, and the NCAA not doing anything, I think it'll happen way before that.
Bro,
You'll be trading players.
College kids is crazy.
I'll send you 3 freshmen for your senior running back.
If I was one of these kids, I would be putting that language in my NIL deal that you cannot trade me.
Got a no trade clause.
No trade clause.
I don't care. I want a no trade.
I don't care. I want it in there now. No trade clause.
Yes.
All right. We've avoided it as long as we could have.
We really have. It's been an hour and a half, and we haven't really made mention of this game.
But we're here now.
As it should be.
We're here now.
Bill, I think it's only right that we both get it out the way for us, and then let Alex just have the floor.
I was gonna, you know what, Alex always does give people the choice, so I'm gonna respect that. Do you want to go first, or you want me and Cottrell to get it out of the way, and you can close it? It's up to you.
I just want to make my argument here of why you should go last. I know whatever you're going to say is going to be very spirited, and I don't want to follow it up.
True.
Personally.
What I have to say is going to be spirited, but here's the thing. My rant is not going to be at the Oregon Duck team. It's going to be at the Oregon Duck fans. So
what?
I'm going to put that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So
now you're going last.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. That's fine. I'm just telling you what it's about. So
all right. Well, here we go then. Indiana, Oregon. One, I hate to use this cliche, but one could say this game was over after the first play of the game. Oregon open, throwing a pick six to the first play. Indiana, and it didn't get better, and it went downhill quick. I'll say that in a second. I will say this: Indiana. We've already. I think both these guys have already said it. We've used the term quite a few times in our group chat, and I think it's true. They're just a juggernaut of a team. They have no weakness. They have no glaring weakness that you're going to watch on tape and say we can exploit that, and we can exploit it enough to where we're going to beat them. It's not there. They are just an all-around good football team. They remind me very much so of the last two national championship teams, both in the Big Ten. There's nothing you're going to watch and say that team doesn't excel in that area of football. They're very good. They're extremely well coached. I think some of the guys on the team are weird, but they are all bought in. They all love their coach. They're just a really good football team. They picked apart an Oregon defense that if we're being honest, was an elite unit. Oregon was a top 10 defense any way you slice it all year long. And that's saying something with the teams they played. So this isn't one of those teams that had a top 10 ranking because they were playing schlubs all year. Oregon has an elite defense, and Indiana made it look like a JV team. And on the other side of the ball, missing their best player, they still just dominate the line of scrimmage. They were more physical, and I feel like they played with even more confidence after beating Oregon and Eugene. They just came after Dante, and they were going to take certain things away. I thought they were masterful at taking those little throws that he likes to make out in the flat all the time, which he tried to do the first play of the game. Indiana said, we're going to take those away, and we're going to get to you before you can process what's going on to throw the ball over the middle of the field. Masterful coaching. I think Kirk Signetti just outcoach Dan Lanning by a mile, and that might be generous. I know we all love Dan Lanning, and Dan Lanning gets a lot of flowers. I'm starting to get to the point where Dan Lanning, for me, is going to have to start winning something before we start putting him on the Mount Rushmore of things like some people are doing. This is the second time in 2 playoffs in a row in a huge game where he's been absolutely embarrassed. Um, and I don't think you could say it's the coordinators, um, you know, but I didn't. I just again, I think he's been outcoached mightily the last 2 times this has happened now. But that being said, um, for me, it's more about Indiana than it is about Oregon. I just think they're that good. Um, they run the ball, they throw the ball, they play great defense. Um, that's just a really hard combination to beat in college football, anywhere really in football. So, um, got to tip the cap to Indiana. They got 1 to go. I think Miami presents a little bit of a different matchup for them. So I am curious. Cottrell kind of mentioned it before. I am curious to see how Indiana is going to attack Miami in that defense, and how they're also going to handle Miami's offense. But we'll talk more about that next week. But um, kind of looking forward to it because I think it's a little bit. Again, I think Miami's different than anything Indiana's really seen. So, but in regards to this game, it was over early, and it was disappointing because I was really looking forward to it, and I really thought after they went down and tied at 7-7 that we were going to have a game, and then the wheels kind of fell off all at once. So I guess Cottrell will give it to you, and then we'll see what Mr. Duck has to say.
All right, so real quick, Patrick asked, is there anything we can learn from the Ohio State versus Indy game that Miami can leverage? Ohio State kept it close. Well, this will kind of tie into, I think, my breakdown of this Indiana and Oregon game. 2 biggest things that Miami will need to do next week is, 1, you have to control your turnovers. Like, you cannot shoot yourselves in the foot because Indiana will come out and they will get that, like they will take over that every single time. Like they will bounce and they will feed off the turnovers and feed off of the mistakes. The second thing I think is that you have to not be able to give up the explosive plays. It felt like every time Indiana had the ball, there was an explosive play that happened, whether it be a long run or a long pass, or it just felt like, the game really opened up very quickly, and you cannot have that happen. You have to make Indiana go down with these methodical drives and, 15, 16, 17 play drives, and, ultimately make those lead to field goals like Ohio State was able to do. They forced Indiana to kick 2 field goals in that football game, and they only scored 13 points there. So the big onus is going to be on the defense there. I think that is going to be how Miami can keep that game close next week. But as far as this game goes, just kind of piggybacking off of what I just said there, I think it was a lot of what Indiana was doing. I mean, they were hovering. They were all over Oregon from that first snap there. And you throw that pick 6, you put yourself right behind the 8 ball there. But also, you have other turnovers. You had the strip sack fumble in that game. You had the block punt later on in the game when the game was, pretty much decided. But, you potentially, maybe something crazy could happen and you have a comeback there. But all of those things kind of happen, and you had sacks happen at the most inopportune times there, and, other things regarding that. So I think Indiana just did a great job of just hovering and staying on top of that Oregon team there. I also want to bring up a point that you made, Bill, about, Dan Lanning in the playoffs and, just kind of not showing up for those big games there. So I think it is some of that, but I also think it's something about playing a team for the second time. I think that's really where he's shown that he struggles. Other coaches going into it with different mindsets of like, oh, how can I learn from the first matchup and things like that. And I'm not saying that Dan Lanning isn't trying to go in and learn from the first matchup. I just think that's ultimately where we see him at his worst, like in those second times around. And I don't think those game plans going in are as favorable, because if you kind of go back and think about it, this goes back to Washington when the guys were still in the Pac-12, and you play Washington twice. They beat you again in the regular season. They beat you in the regular season, then they beat you again in the Pac-12 championship game. Now it's a situation where you saw Ohio State last year in the regular season. You won a really tight game, but then the second game wasn't even close. And then going back to this year, Indiana in the regular season, that game was rather close. I know it was a 30-20 game, and the 2-score game there, but that game was relatively close there. Until Indiana kind of broke it open there within the end. And then in this game, you get another blowout happening there. So I think a lot of this definitely has to go on Dan Lanning. And I think his adjustments in the second time seeing a team in that exact same season there. But I think it would be doing Indiana a huge disservice to just kind of put a lot of that onus on Dan, because Indiana is a well-oiled machine and they are pretty much flawless in every facet of the game. And a lot of that starts with Kirk Cignetti up at the top there. And, you have Cignetti being the coach. You got Fernando Mendoza as the Heisman winner who can make plays with his legs and with his arm. And then you have a defense that even after losing Stephen Daly is still absolutely dominant and getting pressures and forcing turnovers and putting points up on the board with that defense. I mean, those are three, key recipes to success here. And you got to tip your cap to that Indiana team. Now, with that said, Alex, the floor is yours. I'm ready to hear it. Lay into these Duck fans who made you lose to Indiana.
Well, who made you lose? No. Look, it's not about them or us making our team lose. It's a lot more than that. It's about the aftermath of the loss and the way that our Duck fans are reacting. But I want to talk about the game first. I got off of work early, specifically so I could get home for this. I'm watching the game in the car, the first drive. I'm driving, first pass of the game, pick six. I'm screaming in the car. Lady in the car next to me is staring at me like, what the hell is this guy on? And I'm just freaking out because I'm like, this is the worst possible start to the game we could possibly have. And look, I'm going to be completely honest, 26 yards for 28 points. What does that mean? On the 3 turnovers and that blocked kick, Indiana only had to gain 26 total yards to score 28 points. Obviously, getting behind the 8 ball like that is not a great start to any game, whether it's regular season or playoff. Dante Moore looked rattled. He looked rushed. He didn't make his throws were off, including the interception. Had he thrown the ball on the out route ahead of the receiver instead of behind the receiver, we don't have a pick six. We have a completion for 7 yards. So, there's just this was truly a game of inches. Even on the block kick, the Indiana defensive lineman barely got that block kick. Obviously, ended up to 7 points. They didn't have a lot of practice time with all the injured running backs this week. So De'Aaron Hill didn't have a lot of time taking main team snaps. Obviously, we had the RPO option right by the goal line where De'Aaron Hill ran into the ball in Dante Moore's hands. It was a lot of mistakes that you would expect to see in week 1 of the season, week 2 of the season. And here we are in the semifinal of the national championship game, and we're seeing those mistakes. A lot of the Oregon Duck fans are blaming Dan Lanning for this lack of preparation. Well, he's not the one out there throwing the passes. He's not the one running the RPOs. He's calling the plays, but the players are making the mistakes here. And the Oregon Duck fans are taking this chance to jump on Dan Lanning and talk about all of his inadequacies. Dan Lanning has 8 losses as an Oregon Duck coach. 3 of them in his first year as a head coach. He lost to Georgia, who won the national title that year. He lost to Oregon State and Washington that year as well. But after that, every loss he's had has been to a national championship winner or national championship finalist. People can say all he wants that he loses the big games. Well, that's because he's constantly in these big games, putting his team in the spot for success. And we're just going up against teams when they're playing at their absolute best. Ohio State last year, nobody was beating them. Indiana, when we shoot ourselves in the foot and we give them essentially 28 points with the turnovers, no one's beating them. Washington 2 years ago, Michigan was the only team that could find a way to beat that team. So I can't jump off the Dan Lanning train. This guy is an elite coach. Every time an elite coaching position comes open, he is at the top 3 names on the list of coaches that people want to coach their team. I'm upset about this loss. I'm upset about the score. 56-22 is an absolute embarrassment. But I'm an Oregon Duck fan, and I sat here on the couch and I watched every second of that game until the last second went off. Oregon Duck fans, when we went to the Orange Bowl, 25% of the stadium was Oregon Duck fans. When we just now went to play this last bowl game, 5% of the stadium was Oregon Duck fans. These are college football playoff games. We want to have success, but yet we're not showing the support for our guys that we need to. I don't care if it's across the country. I don't care if it's in Atlanta. We have the boosters, we have the sponsors, we have the money where we should be putting fans in the stands where it doesn't feel like these playoff games are road games. And that's where I'm upset. Is like you want to gripe and complain about Dan Lanning in the preparation. Dan Lanning could barely talk to Dante Moore on the sideline right next to him. There's a shot after the first interception where Dan Lanning is literally screaming at Dante Moore and not in anger, just trying to communicate to him because the crowd was so loud because of the Indiana populace that was there. Dante Moore said it in the press conference after the game. I looked up in the stands. I thought that there were red seats. That was just the Indiana fan base. When they showed the stadium, the only section of green you saw was the Oregon Duck band. Like, we got to do better. If we expect Oregon to put out and show out and win this national championship, we need the entire fan base behind this team. What does Ohio State have? What does Michigan have? Even with all the drama that Michigan has, if Michigan was in a playoff game, they would be sold, at least 60% of the tickets would be Michigan fans. But Oregon, we don't have issues. We don't have drama. We just have the dream for success and the national championship title aspirations. And we can't show up for our team. Like, it was an absolute embarrassment to see how little amount of green was at that stadium. Granted, I wasn't at the game. I work retail. I can't afford that stuff. But I know we have the fan base that can. And for us to not show out and not go out there and not support our guys and then bitch and complain afterwards, that's not okay and that's not allowed. If you want to almost set the effort there. If you want to change how this is going, support. I'm sick and tired of. I was seeing posts halfway through the game. Oh, I'm done with this Oregon team. I just broke my television. I'm leaving. I'm not watching any more of this game. It's halftime, people. The game was not over at that point. The Ducks came out, drove well in the second half to start the second half. Dante Moore kind of calmed down in the second half a little bit. It was a little bit too late. 285 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. The interception obviously cost us. And I think that if we had all of our running backs, we would have been able to keep it a little bit more balanced. And I think the game would have been a little bit more, the score would have been a little closer. Will Stein said it himself before the game. The first time we played Indiana, we got away from the run too fast. We cannot do that this time. This time, I feel like he did the exact same thing. De'Aaron Hill only ran the ball 5 times for 86 yards, 17 yards per carry. Granted, he had that 71-yard rush in the second half that led to the touchdown. But, you got to give your workhorse backs the ball and let them make plays in the open field. And we just didn't do that. And now at this point, I'm just rambling. At this point because there's just so much stuff coming to my brain. But, yeah, Oregon Duck fans, we got to be better. Win, lose, or draw, we got to support our team, support our coach. We have probably a top 5 college football coach in the country right now. Win or lose, we are in a great situation. And we just got to hope Dante Moore comes back, and so does Kenyon Sadiq, and we can make a run at it next year. Because we are winning a national championship the next 3 years under Dan Lanning, but not with that negativity coming out of y'all's mouths. I'm done. It wasn't too
lots to unpack there. I think that Dan Lanning you're letting Dan Lanning off the hook a little bit. As far as holding him accountable for certain things, because I think you're right in the mindset of who you've lost to has been really good teams, and who either go play for a national championship or go win a national championship. But before last season and us ultimately winning the national championship, that was one of my biggest gripes with Ryan Day. It was how things look different in the big time matchups, and not even just against Michigan, but really outside of that game against Georgia where they put up the 41 points and lost. I felt like Ohio State would always look different in the big time games as opposed to what they did in throughout the rest of the season there. So I'm in a similar boat to you, Alex, where we've lost, the last few years, we've only lost to either the national champion or a team that went to go play for the national championship. So like this year, it's Indiana and Miami. Last year, our losses were to Michigan, and then to Oregon. And we saw you guys in the playoffs and were able to necessarily avenge that loss per se. Year before that, obviously Georgia, and you had years before where you only lost to Michigan, and then they won the national championship. So I understand where you're coming from because I've actually been there. But at the same time, I do think at some point you have to win the big game once before I can just say, we just are facing
It's
these
only
juggernauts.
his 4th year as a head coach, though. It took Kirby Smart 6 years to win his first national title.
For
I
sure.
think we just got to pump the brakes. It's not like it's year 20. It's not like this is his 4th college football team he's ran, and all of a sudden now he's sucking up where he's never done it. It's only year 4, and every year he's coached, we're getting further and further from 9-3 to 11-2 to Big Ten champs to national semifinal. Like every year he's coached, we have increased. We have not got taken a step back once.
So you're right about that, but it's also okay to say, hey, we're getting better, but we need. I want to win one of the big games. I want to win a Big Ten championship is huge, especially first year in the Big Ten, beating Penn State. That's huge. But there's nothing in me that believes that regardless of how good Ohio State looked in the playoff run against everybody, there's nothing in me that believes that Ohio State was a 30-point, better football team than Oregon last year, because I saw them playing Eugene and it was a 1-point game. Now, I thought Ohio State had opportunities to win the game in the regular season. They didn't take advantage of that, but those type of games can't happen. If you lose to a better team, fine, so be it. But I think it's more so about the way that you look when you lost to Ohio State, the way that you look now when you lose to Indiana. When I saw you guys play them in both teams, I saw you guys play them in the regular season, and the matchups were very, very close. So the talent levels are somewhat equal. Even if Indiana is better, the talent levels are somewhat equal there. And so I think the outcome can't look that way when you have still I'm sure you'd say a top 5 program in all of the country in terms of talent. You say you have a top 5 coach in all of college football in terms of his talent. And then you go out and lose this football game by 30 points. Like, for me, that can't happen. And I think Dan Lanning is owed some of that responsibility in what's taking place in these big time matchups.
I think I would agree with you if it wasn't the turnovers, if it was the game plan, if it was our offensive play calls were terrible, our defensive strategy was allowing Surratt to get behind, our secondary, I would totally agree with you. But there are certain plays and things that happen in a football game that the coach cannot control. Dante Moore misthrowing a ball for an interception. Tierra Hill running into the ball in Dante Moore's hand to cause a fumble. The punt getting blocked. Obviously, that may be a blocking scheme, so that may be on coaching. But 3 of those turnovers you can't put on Dan Lanning or the coaching staff. 3 of those turnovers were plays made by the players, and they were just poor decision plays. And the Tierra Hill was just looked like a miscommunication.
Well, I'd argue that the punt block that happened, you shouldn't have been punting to begin with. You were down 3 scores at that point.
I did just say the punt block may have been a coaching issue. The other 3 were not. And at that point, I feel like the game was kind of in hand. I, of course, had faith that Oregon could score, could score and come back and win this game. Even with a minute left in the game, I was like, "Watch this, babe! Biggest comeback in NCAA history, right here." Like I was, I had faith until the clock ran out. I do agree with you. They should have not punted. I was a little confusing it being even backed up in their territory like that. Whether that's a case of, hey, let's kind of save face and not allow another touchdown, which ended up happening anyway. I don't know what the mindset behind it was. But I do agree, definitely should never have punted in the fourth quarter. The punter should never seen the field in the fourth quarter with the score, especially on the stage that we were in. So I agree with you there, but I can't put the other turnovers on Dan Lanning or the coaching staff. Those are just plays made by players, and Indiana was able to step up and make the better plays that day. So I can't put everything on Dan Lanning. That's all I have to say about that.
Bill, you putting any of this on Dan, or are you
putting a lot of it on Dan? I don't disagree with Alex. I mean, the players end up making plays, and so
for the record, I don't disagree with Alex what he said either.
Yeah. So, but Dan Lanning is the one that sits in the room and comes up with the game plan and other things like that. And again, take away the turnovers. I don't think you watch that Oregon team. And this goes back to the Ohio State game last year. They weren't prepared. They the game plan they came up with last year against Ohio State was terrible. They were never in that game. They defensively they were completely in the wrong scheme, in the wrong sets, and offensively they kept trying to do something that Ohio State was literally like, hey, we're literally taking that away, do something else, and there was no adjustment. And there was no other game plan. And I felt the same way when I watched the game against Indiana the other night. Indiana came out very aggressive. We're like, we're taking the flats away, taking the short stuff away. You're going to have to do something different. And they didn't. That's coaching. Sorry. Like, you're the head guy. Like, if you want all the praise, you want to be a top 5 guy, you want to be mentioned on these coaching searches. And again, I like Dan Lanning. I do think he's a great coach. But at some point, you got to start winning them. Because you know what? This is how James Franklin started. And then 8 years later, he didn't win one of them. And it was like, James Franklin can't win a big game. So am I saying we're going to get there with Dan Lanning? No, I don't believe that. I don't. But at the same time, it's not being out of the question that, like, you have to start questioning how his teams look in these huge matchups. And Alex mentioned the Washington thing before. Like, I was critical of that because I think he came out. I said that. I literally said that the first season we did the show. He came out in the rematch with Washington with the same exact game plan from the first game. That's coaching. You can't put that, like, he's the head guy. Like, Will Stein, coordinator, whoever you want, like, they all come out with stuff and what they want to do. He has the final say to say, that's what we're doing. Like, it's his program. So, again, I think he's an elite coach. I think he will win a national championship, if not, one, if not more. But it's not crazy to ask questions or make assessments based off what he's done the last 3 years in these games either, and say, does he have to change something? Because I think he does. Because you mentioned the big thing, which is getting pointed out everywhere. You look at talent-wise on those rosters, like, if you look at it on paper, it shouldn't be a game. So again, when you're, I don't care how you slice it, when you take a lesser talented team by that much of a drastic measure and go out and beat a team full of 5 and 4 stars and get smoked by 40 points, sorry, some of that's coaching, bud. There's nowhere else to put it.
It was only 34 points.
Alex, I definitely want you to get the last word here, but I think that is ultimately what Bill said is my biggest takeaway here is Dan Lanning. Is he going to turn into, and I'm not saying one way or another how I think it's going to turn out, but is he going to turn into James Franklin, where he's an excellent recruiter, but he just can't win the big games, but he's always in the mix? Like, Penn State was always in the mix. Like, last year they were in the national semis, just like how Oregon was, this year. Or is he going to be on the flip side where he turns into that Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, where in year 6 or year 5, 5, 6, whatever the case may be, figures it out and gets over the hump, gets national championship, and then is consistently still in the mix, but at some point gets over that hump. So I'm very curious to see what way that ultimately goes out there. But like I said, I want you to have the final word here with your Ducks.
Well, I'm going to answer what you just asked. And I never like to compare Dan Lanning to an Ohio State coach, obviously, like Ryan Day. But for this situation, how many, I honestly don't know because I didn't follow the Big Ten for a while. How many Big Ten championships did James Franklin have?
I think he has one.
He's one. Okay. How many Big Ten championships does Ryan Day have?
One.
Okay. Dan Lanning's been in the Big Ten for 2 years. He also has one. So saying he can't win big games, I don't buy that. Beat Ohio State at Autzen last year. Will beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game last year. He's won big games. This is just, like I said, he's losing on the biggest stage against
James
the teams.
Franklin also beat Ohio State, and he still has that narrative.
What year? What was Ohio State ranked at that time when he beat them?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like
1 or 2. Like they were a top program. It was our only loss that year. Reason why we didn't make the playoffs.
What year was that? Like 2017?
16, I think.
Okay, so you're going back almost 10 years to find an
early.
example.
So early James Franklin, early Dan Lanning. The parallels are still there.
Terrell, I just want to jump to the screen and
So, dude, see, bro, I'm not saying he ends up being that, but again, it's not outrageous to say
to have the question.
Like,
It's not outrageous
to have the question.
Do you know what irritated me more? Okay, Dan Lanning is going to be Kirby Smart. He was
okay.
Everybody who's been on Nick Saban's coaching tree has a lot of success, knows how to coach.
Except Lane Kiffin.
Obviously, there needs to. I mean, technically, he coached the national semifinal team as well this year. So, I mean, jury's still out there.
Not really.
But I think what irritated me more was opening up Twitter and seeing that Kentucky had landed linebacker Elijah Barnes from Texas when he should have been making a game plan for Indiana. He was out recruiting in the transfer portal. That's what irritated me. Don't know me, Bill.
I get it.
Don't know me. I don't see any players committing to Cal from Tosh Uapoi's team. During the week he was prepping for the national championship semifinal. And guess what? The Oregon Duck defense, I thought, played fantastic despite the short fields that Indiana was given. I thought Oregon's defense played much better than the second time around. Obviously, the 28 points with, like I said, 26 yards to score 28 points makes a huge difference. But when they gave Indiana a full field to drive, I thought Oregon's defense had looked improved from the first time around. But
all right, what?
Go ahead.
Whose choice was it to let him stay?
Dan Lanning's, absolutely. But if you're going to stay, and we've talked about this since the hirings happened, I don't like that they were splitting time. I said it from the beginning that I hated it.
We did say that.
Even Control, you agreed when Brian Hartline, you didn't like the fact that he was splitting time either. And now they're preparing for Indiana during the transfer portal window. Like, what are these guys going to do? They're either going to lose out on recruits, or they're going to and make an efficient game plan, or they're going to work on their recruits and the game plan, and something's going to lose out. And what lost out was the Oregon Ducks game plan, especially offensively.
Well, it's either that, or you hand the offense and the defense over to two people that are not ready probably to be in that, not making game plans though, dude. Not having the final say, not calling plays.
Will Stein didn't make a game plan this game, so I mean, arguably, I would have liked to see the other guy.
And then walk into a national semifinal and get blown out, and then you're gonna come back and say, well, if our two coordinators stayed, maybe this wouldn't happen. Like, you're climbing an unclimbable mountain there. Like, you're never. And I'm not saying you personally. Right. I'm saying there's no right answer there. That's the era that we're in with all this NIL and portal bullshit. There's no easy way to do that. I'll double down on the other part with you. I think it's disgusting nobody showed up for that game. I will agree with you on that. Like, for as much as, and I know you're a diehard fan, but for as much as you guys tout your fan base being just as big and just as good as all these other big, like, you're right. Michigan will never show up to a big bowl game and have 5% of the fans there. Ohio State won't either. Texas won't. Alabama won't. To show up and see that literally felt like you might as well just play that game in Indiana. It would have been better for you guys to play that game in Indiana because the stadium's way smaller and there have been less fans there. There have been less Indiana fans at a home game if you played in Indiana than you would when playing down in Atlanta. So that I completely agree with you. That's disgusting. You guys need to work on that shit.
Yeah.
Alex, because I know this last topic is and important. And Bill, I mean, I guess you're part of it too. You're the one that found the list. We are at 2 hours here. Do we want to save it for next week, or do we want to try and get it out the way now?
I say we save it. I say we save it because, I mean, again, I think we'll come up with that and probably a couple other things for the show next week going in. So I would say save it.
All right. Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
All right. Well, we have one more. Let me see. We got
oh man, it's gonna hurt Alex's heart
so much. It hurts me so much to put the tombstone and the Ducks on the tombstone, but it is what it is.
We're dirt buddies.
We're dirt buddies. Eliminator Mountain has one more week to go. Obviously, we've been climbing the mountain all season long. We've lost a lot of teams along the way, and we're finally down to the final two, Miami and Indiana. And it's right now, it's really just like Darth Vader versus Darth Vader for me, because Indiana is now my sworn nemesis for the rest of my life, and Mario Cristobal is my sworn enemy for the rest of my life. So no matter who wins, I lose. This is great.
I gotta think one of those is way worse if one of those teams wins than the other.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
This could be nuclear meltdown next 2 weeks from now if Miami wins national championship. That's all I'm saying. If you want to see a strung out Alex, Miami wins the national championship. Come back here in 2 weeks. You might
I'm gonna
see
rip
something.
this football in half. If that happens.
You might see something special. Alex, I gotta give you credit though. You got to green boots this year. It's a step in the right direction. One could argue it wasn't for him, but you at least got there this year. Put some Oregon yellow boots next to him. But we're left to 2 teams.
Can we acknowledge one thing though?
If anybody said that Indiana, Miami at the beginning of the year, they're lying.
We were this close from having this show finish its 3rd year with each one of us winning a national championship. We were this close.
Yep, and see who blew it. I did. We did our job.
Yep. Saying Harbaugh won, Ryan Day won, Dan Lanning didn't win. It's all right though. We're going to put some ugly ass Miami or Indiana banner in that top right corner now.
You were trying to hang on. You were trying to hang on to our coattails, is what you were trying to do, Alex. I see you.
I only put up our banners. I'll never put up a Miami banner ever.
I will say though, it looks like just based on the banner and based on how the last 5 college football seasons have gone, the national championship always runs through Ohio State, because the only way you get there is by beating Ohio State. Miami had to do it. Indiana had to do it. Michigan had to do it the year they won. Georgia had to do it the year they won. Ohio State's inevitable. You beat Ohio State, that's how you know you're going to win a national championship.
Oregon beat Ohio State last year and didn't win a national championship.
Well, they didn't beat them when the playoff where it mattered, which is
all right, guys. 9:00. Bye. In all seriousness, everyone who tuned in today, we appreciate you. Please like, share, subscribe. Normally we do shows on Saturdays. This week we had a little bit of an audible to do the show today. We will be back next Saturday, same time, same place, 7 a.m. Western time, Pacific Standard Time, 10 a.m. East Coast time. I know that was rough.
That was bad.
I will say though, definitely appreciate you guys, tuning in, tapping in and watching the show with us at a different time slot. We had a ton of people still in the comments, and this isn't even our normal time here. So looking forward to getting back to normal next week, previewing the Natty, and just kind of getting some fun topics in here, because we are very quickly approaching the finish line with this season of Coast to Coast. So it's definitely been a fun one. Looking forward to next week, hearing the previews and seeing how all of that goes. But also just kind of getting some fun stuff out there too is going to be really interesting, because every week it's always, a ton of previews or, a ton of recaps and things like that. But next week gets to go a little bit different. So I'm excited for a little bit of new stuff and, having some fun here before we ultimately close out the year.
Next week will definitely be fun. It'll be more of kind of a laid back show, because we really have our preview and prediction for the championship game. And then other than that, it's going to be a lot of kind of fun lists and stuff like that. So it'll be a little bit of a different feel, but entertaining nonetheless. So any other final thoughts, gentlemen? Time to get out of here.
No, having the show today is going to be real interesting, because we normally get off the show and we get to go watch football, but today it's going to be a different kind of football. We get to go watch the NFL. Alex, I know your team is playing today, the 49ers.
Against Bill's team.
I would wish you good luck, but you're playing against the Eagles. So I don't want
watch
to.
This.
I want to be a neutral party here. I want to be a neutral party here.
10 times more Niner fans at Eagle Stadium than the word Ducks in Atlanta. Just saying.
No way. For a playoff game, no shot.
Dude, Niners travel. Niner fans are the definition of traveling fans.
To the parking lot, and then they get beat up, and they're not going to get let in.
That's true. Y'all did knock out one of your 76ers players for being a fan of the Redskins or the Commanders a couple of years ago. So you're right.
No
Right.
mercy in this. No mercy.
That said, though, I wish you guys both good luck. Looking forward to the games today, and just different kind of football, and then see you guys next week.
We'll recap that game next week too.
Bill will be upset though next week though.
Maybe.
But hey, thank y'all for watching. As usual, like, share, subscribe, follow us. We'll see you next Saturday. Not same time,
just say 10
place.
Eastern, because you get confused the other way.
Real quick here, because I don't want. Obviously, this is not an NFL show. You guys are going up against each other. It is Sunday. Alex, what's the key to victory for you? Bill, what's the key to victory for you? I just want it quick, nothing long, drawn out, because again, not NFL, but we're here and it's the day it's happening.
McCaffrey, Kittle, McCaffrey. That's the key to success today. Give the ball to McCaffrey a lot, control the clock, and then Kittle in the red zone. That's the recipe for success today.
Bill.
I think defense. I think they're going to take away everything on the outside. I think if they let C-Mac do his thing, that's not enough to beat us. I think we're going to have plenty of success against that defense. I think Saquon has a big day. I think we control the clock. I like our defense a lot better than the kind of what's the shell of what's left in San Francisco. So
that's true.
I think we win pretty comfy.
Nice. All right. Well, that's all I had. I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. And like I said, it's Sunday and we get some NFL action today. So pretty different, but still fun nonetheless.
All right.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you as always. See everybody next week.